All right, welcome to this episode of Inside the Gym podcast. I'm Chris Gilbert, your host for this episode, and today we are going to talk about the importance of atmosphere versus equipment variety. I wanted to do this episode because for a long time I've talked about how atmosphere is far more important than your equipment variety. And then over the summer, I went to a couple of gyms. For instance, I went to a gym in North Carolina where the owner hasn't put very much effort into the atmosphere, but it had like 300 pieces of equipment, and I called it a bucket list gym. And it got me thinking, okay, like, can I say atmosphere is the most important thing if I'm calling something a bucket list gym that has very little effort put into the atmosphere? And then I go to a gym in Indianapolis that is basically almost the same equipment variety as it was the first time I was there, but the owner had brought in Jesse, Grizzly Bear Designs, and painted out the entire gym. And now I feel like that's a bucket list gym because he amped up the atmosphere so much. So I thought, let's put together a panel of varying people from the industry, and let's talk about atmosphere versus equipment variety. So on the podcast today, we have Kristin. You've seen Kristin on the podcast before. She's the owner of JK Barbell, a powerlifting gym in Baltimore, Maryland. She's very heavily involved in the powerlifting side of the industry. So I thought she would be a great person to have on because she can talk about from a powerlifting standpoint. We've got David Scott. You've seen David Scott on the podcast a couple of times. Dave is the owner of Hybrid Strength in Tip City, Ohio. It is a bodybuilding, powerlifting, functional fitness, kind of full hybrid. Dave's got a little bit of everything in that giant gym. And then we've got Sydney, who is an IFBB pro. So she can talk about the atmosphere versus equipment variety from an actual bodybuilding professional standpoint. Sydney's also very closely associated with Brandon Garner, the owner of the RBA Iron Gyms. So she's got even a little bit more insight for somebody that's a pro. So I thought that this would be a really good panel of giving us a little bit of variety of people to talk about atmosphere from variety of size and equipment variety from variety of size. So, and the other thing I wanted to talk about was, as I got to thinking about this topic, does it change based on the size of the gym, based on how old the gym is, things like that? So if we want to start there, David, you want to start us off since you've been on the podcast a bunch of times? Do you think that equipment variety, well, first, what is your thought? We'll get everybody's thoughts on, do you think that there's clearly a winner on equipment variety versus atmosphere?
Yeah. So I think, in my opinion, atmosphere is going to be the most important thing. I mean, anyone can have the nicest, fanciest equipment, the brand new, shiniest toy out there, but if the atmosphere is completely wrong, you're not going to want to train there.
Mm-hmm. What was your thoughts, Kristin?
Yeah, I mean, you've seen my gym. It's very small. Our whole business model is based on, like, this is the culture that we're building and the community. So definitely, I would say the atmosphere is much more important.
Yeah, and did you have a thought, Sydney?
I agree with what they're saying, but I still do think that the equipment variety is going to be pretty important for someone who, you know, is bodybuilding focused or powerlifting focused. I mean, if you come into a gym and, you know, they only have half working equipment, or, you know, stuff is old and just not really kept up with very well, or they don't have a good variety, then it's not going to be the best workout. And now on the flip side, I think at your home gym, atmosphere is going to be very important because, like David said, you're not going to want to train there if, you know, everyone's in a sour mood and it doesn't feel like a very welcoming community.
Oh, 100%. And that's why I've always said that, like, atmosphere is the king. But then those other gyms just kind of threw me off this summer. And, like, if we dive into David's gym a little bit, like, how many pieces of equipment do you have in your gym, David?
Just over 200.
Yeah, so Dave's got over 200 pieces of equipment. If you were to analyze the atmosphere, it's a warehouse gym. He's doing everything he can to amp up the atmosphere and make it an experience. But it's a bit of a challenging space to do that too. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, just the sheer size of it, being 27,000 square feet is just enormous. You do what you can with a warehouse style gym, and creating that atmosphere. I personally like a lot of color, a lot of flair. It's just kind of the old school vibe that I go for. And so that's why we have a lot of great murals that are done and a lot of graffiti. I just feel like if you have a lot of color in there, it's a lot more pop, a lot more wow. It's nothing against newer school designs where everything's blacked out with LED lights. I mean, I just, each person likes their own thing, and you're going to attract people that, either like that kind of gym that I have, or they like the other style gym, or, so there's a little bit of everything for everyone. So.
Yeah. And I think that's what got me thinking about, does the size of the gym make a difference? Because like with Kristin, like how big is your gym?
We're about 3,000 square feet. So
right.
So
smaller. At 3,000 square feet, you maxed out the variety of equipment you can have very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was because it's so small, like we had to be really intentional. My target audience is powerlifters. We do have people who, just do general strength training as well, obviously, but the main focus is powerlifting. So prioritizing, combo racks, obviously, and having enough plates, having enough bars, like that was a really big priority in the beginning. The accessory equipment, like I have maybe 8 machines,
right?
But I have 8 really thoughtfully chosen machines that are variable and can be multifunctional. Does that make sense? So that yes. I was maximizing the use of that space.
And even at that amount of equipment, like you don't have a lot of space to add much more.
Not a whole lot. No, we're definitely, at this point, probably when we get to a place where we have the capital to invest in pieces of equipment, we'll have to start deciding on like we need to include, like if we have this ancient leg curl machine, it's like a lying leg curl machine. The footprint on that machine is larger than is necessary. So like someday, hopefully in the near future, we upgrade that. It needs to be something that's a little bit more multifunctional and has a more efficient footprint than the one that we currently have. And so those things are super well thought out because I don't have a ton of space to work with. But I also
so you maxed out your equipment very quickly, so you had to start focusing on it.
Right. I mean, and I started my business before I had a brick and mortar. So like the business started as like I'm selling an experience before I was selling a gym. So that was the natural progression for me because I started out like I was always selling the experience you were getting with me. That was always the product. And now I just also have a gym that can like service regular members that don't necessarily want coaching as well.
Yeah. And then
the first time.
Oh yeah. And then as far as like Kristin's experience, I know that I follow you on social media. I follow Brandon on social media. You guys travel around. You like to go to different gyms. But in your home gym, Brandon's got a little bit of both. Like he's got that kind of that new school vibe, but he's got that old school vibe. Also, having watched him grow, like he was definitely focused on equipment variety at first. And then once he got the equipment where he wanted it, then he went after the atmosphere.
Right. So the original RBA Iron location, it's also a warehouse gym. And he originally just had half the space. So it was about 7,000 square feet. And then earlier this year, he took over the other side as well. So now it's about 14 or 15,000 square feet. So it's kind of in the middle between David's gym and Kristin's gym, hers being like almost a micro, very focused powerlifting gym. And then 27,000 square feet is crazy. So, I mean, 15,000 square feet is, still a decent amount of space, and it's a lot of space to fill. But when he first opened, it was mainly just, equipment variety. And he was trying to get every old school piece that he could get to, put into the gym. And he painted the walls himself and put up some mirrors, and that was about it. So he also had Grizzly Bear Designs come out and do a bunch of murals in the gym as well. The second RVA Iron location it was an old furniture store, so it's a standalone, and I think that's about 6,500 square feet. So still on the smaller side, and that one's maxed out. Like there's nowhere extra to add space to that. So, a lot of people ask for extra things, and there's just not the room for it unless you have to, you'd have to build on an addition to that location.
Things to take into consideration from a locally owned gym standpoint is, if you're going to focus on one or the other, which one do you start focusing on first? And at what point do you switch to the other? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, Richmond, Virginia didn't really have a privately owned bodybuilding, strength training focused gym. It was all corporate, like Planet Fitnesses, Gold's Gyms, Crunch, but no where for everybody to be able to kind of congregate. That's, in that space. So I think just getting the location opened with the machines that he had was the priority then. And then, once he was open and making money, then adding on to that and doing the designs and adding extra stuff to make the atmosphere better. But I do think that the base of the atmosphere is the people that are there.
Mm-hmm.
You could be in a gym that, doesn't look pretty, but if you've got good people in there and the community itself is, that's what makes people keep coming back.
Oh yeah, I think we can all agree that culture trumps everything else.
Yeah.
Would you guys all agree on that one, I guess?
Yeah, I agree.
And atmosphere goes into culture, but I also think that the atmosphere, we can put that in a slightly different category. That culture is the overriding part of. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So David, when you're in a little bit different place also in the fact that you purchased a gym and then moved it to the big location. So when you first purchased it, was your initial focus on improving the atmosphere, or was your initial focus on improving the equipment?
So I guess for me, not really knowing what I was doing, because, if you guys don't know, I have a nursing background. So I was literally all healthcare, and I just happened to like lifting as a hobby. And so being able to purchase the gym that I went to for 7 years, that was going out of business, my initial reaction was I just had to buy more equipment, because there was not a whole lot of equipment that was in there. And if there was, it was like body solid stuff, and it was just like commercial stuff, and it was just a mismatch of stuff. So it was initially like just buy. And then, over time, just I think I was probably at year 5 or 6 probably before I really started to say, okay, we've maxed out our space now. Let's really start to define what we are and what we want. And so let's really focus on the atmosphere. But we already had, like Sydney said, we already had like a group of individuals, from powerlifters to bodybuilders to just regular gym rats, that, were all like-minded. Everyone was there for a purpose. Everyone was there to help each other. And, the culture was important as much as the equipment was. But yeah, then atmosphere, for me personally, it came later.
Mm-hmm. So then it's safe to assume that atmosphere is really important, but only after your equipment variety is at a certain level?
Not necessarily. It takes a lot.
Sorry, I mean that in a manner of like, nobody's going to say it's okay to just have an atmosphere where there are a bunch of assholes on right here. Nobody's going to say that. But
no, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, you can have a lot of really nice equipment, and you might get the people in there with the equipment, but if the atmosphere is off, or the culture's off, the community's off, you're not going to want to stay, and then just educating people, especially with a lot of the old school pieces, unless you're refurbishing them and making them look brand new and shiny. The younger generation, they see the flashy, shiny object and then they want it. Why don't we have that? And they don't understand the old equipment is sometimes better than the new stuff that's being made, from both just a manufacturing standpoint as well as just mechanics. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, I think that what I'm kind of like getting at is like that they're both important,
Right.
but like you've got to have. I think that culture is. I think we've kind of agreed that culture is the overriding most important thing,
Mm-hmm.
and that you've got to have a certain amount of equipment in order to even get people into your gym.
Sure.
And depending on what size your gym is, that varies.
So like take for instance, because we've always been bodybuilding, powerlifting, functional training. So by the time I was able to afford one, our first monolift was 3 years into the business because I had other things that I really wanted to focus on. And just having that monolift then changed the whole dynamic of the business. The return on investment was great because we had like 40 people join because they didn't have to drive 30 minutes south to Dayton. They could stay up north above Dayton and train here. But it also changed, the vibe of the gym. It's like, oh, now this is a serious gym. You've got a monolift, So I don't know. I don't know what I was getting at, but it's just, culture and the culture's got to be there, but yet the equipment and atmosphere, it's like they go hand in hand. Whatever one is 1A, to the first one is,
Yeah, they kind of go back and forth depending on where your gym is what I'm hearing.
Right.
I think a monolift is a really fascinating example of a unique piece that would be like a really big selling point. Like there's you're not going to get that in a commercial gym. We have predominantly commercial gyms in our area, and I knew I was never going to be able to compete with that. I can't compete with the big box gyms as far as equipment variety. I just can't. I don't have space for it. I don't have capital for it. So being niche and being specific was an important part of being able to fill a hole and like find the membership base that was looking for something like this. Monolift is on my list. It's high on the priority list because I hear you. Like the closest place to here that has a monolift is like 25 minutes at least, and I'm in a city, so that's like without traffic. And then the next closest is like an hour south of here. So that we have to get to a place where I can afford one, but we did prioritize combo over monolift because I am so closely associated with USA Powerlifting. But those types of things I think are in between pieces, right? Because a monolift doesn't only equipment variety, it also gives you a certain amount of atmosphere because that's going to attract a certain type of lifter. Joe Schmo off the street doesn't know what a monolift is.
Correct.
Yeah. And Sydney, as a pro, like you mentioned, like as a bodybuilder, like equipment variety is the first thing you look for. Like if you weren't working out at RBA, like what would you be looking for in a gym? Like as a pro, like.
Yeah, and that's where I think equipment variety comes into play because when I'm traveling, obviously, like if a gym, looks shiny and new, that's going to be exciting, but I'm going to look at what machines they have because I have very specific programming that I follow. And if I don't think that I'm going to, get a good workout in that gym, I'm going to choose a gym that I think the machines look better.
Right. And if you can get pros working out in your gym,
I'm sorry, say that again.
Basis, that changes the atmosphere also.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because, like David said, these new generation of lifters don't really, care about the old school equipment or can't really appreciate it. I also feel like they can't really appreciate some of the newer equipment and how expensive it is.
Mhm.
And, what goes into choosing this machine over this machine, why this one's more rare than this one, why the, biometrics of one machine works better than the other. Like, I think, they come in and record their workouts and post them on TikTok or whatever. And that's what they're looking for. And I think, for someone like that, that's doing more, social media influenced training, they're going to look for more atmosphere versus like what machines are in there.
Mhm.
So,
yeah, I think that's an interesting point. Like if you're attracting more social media, like Instagram-y lifting people versus competitors, and I think that changes the atmosphere and changes the vibe in your gym.
yeah, for sure.
And like, I think you and I have talked before, David, that like when you started attracting like pros from even an hour away, it changed things in the gym.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, because I think the local community, sees that as like, oh, geez, someone's traveling an hour to come train at your gym, and now they're IFBB pros that are training here. That not only draws in like experienced lifters as like, wow, this is legit, but it also brings in the younger crowd because they're like looking up to those individuals, and it's like, wow, so and so's trained here, I want to train here,
Yeah, and then like with your gym, Kristin, I'm assuming that you have a pretty large collection of people who actually compete. But does that help bring in people who aren't competitors?
Directly, I don't think so. Like the powerlifting, like part of what it is that we do sort of speaks for itself. Like we prioritized making sure we had combo racks in order to make sure that, because like powerlifters are not going to commit to a gym that doesn't have those things, generally speaking.
Right.
I do in my personal training business. I have a wider variety of people that not everyone competes, and that has more to do with my ability to engage those people in this environment. And those people definitely like couldn't possibly care less what the good question is, because they're paying me to do that thinking for them. So like we're
that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, because I thought that the powerlifting side of the business might have a little different feel, or might be a little bit different on some of the different things we were talking about. Because like with David's gym, David has a lot of general fitness people who love a badass gym, but they're never going to compete in anything. And the same thing, but the powerlifting gyms I've been to, some of them have a few people who love to go in there and go hard. And not that you don't go hard in any gym, but like powerlifting gyms tend to attract people who really want to compete.
I think ours is a little bit unique, and like I think if you remember, like you got that vibe as well, because our focus is on the female experience. We're able to reach people even outside of powerlifting and general strength training, because we are uniquely catered to that female experience. We really wanted to make sure women felt comfortable in a way. So we have like that old school gym bro vibe, but like it's a little bit softer.
Yeah, if you guys haven't seen Kristin's gym, it's kind of a unique, cool spot where it's like really hardcore, but with soft edges.
Right.
So,
and that's kind of what we were going for. I know it sounds cheesy, but it has really created a culture. We do have male members. I absolutely do have men who come here and lift more than I'm ever going to lift in my whole life. But the bulk of my clients, my members, are female, and they come here because they feel comfortable and have that experience, have a more traditional, old school strength vibe without it feeling intimidating and overwhelming, because that can be the experience for women, and they don't, especially in the bigger box options, which we have plenty of, the weight room can be really overwhelming. And I wanted to create a place where people felt more comfortable. So I literally have competitive power lifting next to women in their 70s who are just trying to make sure they can go up the stairs by themselves for the rest of their lives. And everyone's having a good time.
Yeah, no, 100%. So let's say that I was somebody, because we've kind of gotten into the middle now. let's say that I were someone who was going to start a 5,000 square foot gym. Should my first focus be on finding the best equipment I can possibly afford and worrying about the walls and the lighting later? Or should I bring in like a catalog of equipment, just order some Life Fitness, just so I have enough equipment, bring in Jesse because he's the best in the business, have him paint out the gym, make it the baddest place anybody's ever seen, and then slowly change out the equipment? Anybody have thoughts on that one?
I think it depends so much on like what is the existing community that you're a part of and have access to, what is the need and the that you're trying to fill in your local community, and how much startup capital are you working with? Like, where are your strengths? Because like,
Yeah, that makes sense.
because everybody, I think probably our answers would be different because we have different. I had almost no startup capital, so I had to prioritize a couple of big tickets. Everything else was hand me down Facebook Marketplace stuff. That what could I scrounge up from different places to like fill out the space when we started, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I knew I at least had enough of a following that I could get the doors open, and we could. Then everything else had to be a later problem.
Well, and I think that you don't need to completely fill your gym when you first open, because then that's kind of locking up your space. And then, like you said, you would have to replace the machines, you know, when you wanted to get new stuff. So I think that just having like a basis is probably better, just a good variety of equipment, but not, you know, completely filling up the space that you have. So you can add on to it later. And then that gives the members something to look forward to as well, especially if like something Brandon does is he's always bringing in new machines. He's always swapping stuff in and out. And that's something that keeps the members excited, because then they get new machines to play with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think for me, at least in my experience and in my situation, you know, if I doing it over again like I did, and any advice I would tell someone that's looking to open a 5,000 square foot is, and I think we had talked about having an episode about this, is, you know, what the basic pieces be, one, but two, like look in the area. What's missing in the area that you can find that is going to set you apart from somebody else, whether it's equipment or atmosphere. In my case, there was no bodybuilding gyms, and the closest powerlifting gym was 30 minutes away. So being able to say, okay, I want an old school bodybuilding gym. How can I make this? But I knew that I can't just define my niche down that far. So it's like, okay, what else can I add to this? So in my case, I did research and saw, okay, on the East Coast and West Coast, a lot of these hybrid style gyms were starting to pop up where they incorporated multiple disciplines into one roof. And I'm like, no one's doing that in this area. I'm going to do that and take that idea and turn it into a hybrid style gym. And it kind of blew up, just for the fact that it was so different at the time in 2014 compared to what everybody else is used to around here, which was Anytime Fitnesses, YMCAs, you know, LA Fitnesses. And so you put it in an old warehouse and then everyone's like, oh, this is awesome, you know. So yeah, it's just, I would say, you know, equipment, get your basics down, and you can define that however you want. X many leg pieces, back pieces, chest pieces, and so on. But then really just look at your environment and the community and say, okay, what's missing that I can separate myself from? And then moving forward, what pieces of equipment can I continue to add in or swap out that makes us different than this gym down the street, who might like copy you and be like, oh, now we're going to get this fancy pullover. Okay, well, guess what? Now I'm going to go get this glute machine that you don't have, you know? I always try to stay one step ahead of everybody else in our area.
Oh yeah, and I think that's an important. We've gotten into an area that I wasn't expecting us to get into, and I hadn't even thought about. Was that like researching what else everyone else in your area is doing, and then focus on the other one. Like whatever, if all the gyms in your area are really strong in equipment, but they have weak atmospheres, focus on the atmosphere and put together a really badass atmosphere gym. And you can always up your equipment later. But if there isn't a bodybuilding gym in your area, then really focus on getting in an amazing amount of equipment, and then you can paint the walls and bring Jesse in later.
Yep.
No matter what, bring Jesse in at some point.
And I don't think there's no wrong answer to it. It just depends on, again, your situation, what's going on in your area, and, kind of what you want for your vision for your gym.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like if I was going to open a gym in Baltimore, I would probably go new school, because there isn't a new school gym in Baltimore. If I were going to open a gym in DC, Northern Virginia, I wouldn't open a new school gym because Leo owns the market. Like, why would you want to compete against Leo? If I was going to go to Richmond, there's not, like, Brandon's floating in the middle between new school and old school, and he's kind of grabbing both sides. So I'm not sure where I would go if I were going to open a gym down there, because Brandon's leaning a little bit more towards old school. So I'd probably go with a new school gym down there if I were going to, but that he's doing a good job of floating that middle. And if I were going to like Dayton, I would probably go new school because I can compete against you.
Right.
So I think that's a really smart thing, is like, do your research, figure out what your area is lacking. And if you own a gym or you want to open a gym, go to every gym in the area.
Mm-hmm.
Buy your day passes. Go to those gyms. Work out there, not just once. Work out there multiple times. Get a week pass. And really get a feel for that gym. And then figure out what you can add to your gym that maybe isn't in those gyms. And I'm not saying that those gyms are necessarily going to be like, but and it's not that they're trying to make your gym something they're lacking. You try to just make your gym different.
Right.
Because if you were to go to hybrid, you'd be a hard time going into hybrid going, this is what it's lacking.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a 27, right?
Yeah.
27,000 square foot gym full of equipment. Like, you're not going to walk in there and go, yeah, I really feel like that gym is lacking this piece of equipment. It's there in some form or another. So I think that's a really smart thought process to make sure you're doing your research. And if you already own a gym, even if you've been open for years, don't be afraid to venture out and visit some of the other gyms. And from my experience, outside a handful of people, most of the gym owners that own locally owned gyms are very open to having conversations with other locally owned gym owners. Mm-hmm. Or if you've got some pros in your area, like if you've got somebody like Sydney, ask Sydney to come in and say, hey, what is your recommendation? Like, I'm sure Sydney'd be happy to go to a gym that she might work out at and say, hey, you're missing this piece of equipment, or this is where you're lacking, right, Sydney?
Yeah, especially, I mean, Brandon opened RV Iron in 2021. And since then, he's added a posing room, he's added a recovering room, he added a powerlifting space, turf, all kinds of stuff. But one thing that he always, did was ask the members what they wanted. And so we had a lot of bikini competitors in there at one point, and they were like, there's no glute machines in here. So he did a whole little build out, and we have a little, cake factory section now that's got a bunch of glute machines. So, and a lot of bodybuilders travel for shows, travel for, whatever reasons, and they try different gyms and they try different machines that they like, and they come back and they're like, hey, this was awesome. So I think input from the people that you have training at your gym is really important as well.
Yeah.
And just following other gyms, I follow RVA Iron, and, there's plenty of things that over the years I've seen you guys do. And I'm like, you know what, that's a good idea. Or I like the style you did or whatever. And I'm like, I'm going to try and incorporate that in my gym, because that might be something that's different because you guys are on the coast and not in the Midwest. And so I'm like, well, hey, that's something new coming up or whatever. They're doing it different. I'm going to figure this out. I've been into your guys' website. I followed all of your stories. Yeah, and I'm like, oh, I got to try that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to bring that here. So that helps me in this area stay ahead of the game. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you find that true also in the powerlifting area, Kristin? Like, are powerlifting gym owners like following each other and like going, oh, well, like, let's help each other out, or this guy's doing something really well, let me try to incorporate that in my gym?
I definitely do that as much as I can. There's not a lot of powerlifting gyms in this area. There are a few. It helps that being the state chair, like I am going to gyms all the time, either hosting meets or attending meets or coaching at meets. Like, so I'm at meets in a whole variety of gyms, like all the time. So there's always a lot of like, oh, this worked really well over at this gym. How can I incorporate that into what I'm doing? Or it works the other way around as well. Like, they were doing this. I hated how that worked. I don't want to do that. So both, I mean, and I'm in a very unique position where I have a relationship with a lot of these gym owners because of the fact that I'm in that state chair position.
No, that's cool. And I think also one of the things we haven't talked about is, if you own a gym already or you're about to open a gym, like, your facility is also going to, like, if not dictate, like, push you in a direction. If that makes any sense. Like for David, you're 27,000 square feet. If you were to go and paint that entire place black and put rubber on the entire floor, you would probably have half the amount of equipment for the capital investment that it would have taken.
Yeah, probably.
So,
yeah.
I mean, so you got to kind of like, and then like, if you saw the episode one of the other episodes that David did, we had the gentleman Anthony that owns the grind gyms in the Baltimore area.
Mm-hmm.
They have two different gyms now. And if you go to the gym in the downtown Baltimore area or the gym in the suburbs, they're two completely different feeling gyms because the buildings are two completely different feeling spaces. And they just went with that space. And like with Kristin's gym, there's a lot of exposed brick that's super cool. And if Kristin were to bring a muralist in and cover up all that exposed brick, that would almost be sad. Like, because that's super cool vibe is that exposed brick that she has in her gym. So I think kind of like going with what you've got and like letting your space dictate a little bit of it. I mean, obviously your space is going to dictate the amount of equipment you have, but it's not going to dictate the type of equipment you have. But from an atmosphere standpoint and what you do and the way you go, I think like flowing with your space. Does that make sense?
Well, definitely, because like the original RVA Iron location is a warehouse gym with the high ceilings and more of like a rugged feel. And then the second location in Chester, like I said, it was an old furniture store. So it's low ceilings, it's definitely a little bit more crammed. There's no front desk, like designated space. So it's like all kind of in the middle of the gym. And so it's definitely a different vibe for sure. Like when I go down there, I feel like I am training at a different gym, and there's also different equipment down there. Mm-hmm. So, it just kind of, he worked with what he had, and the lights, the paint, like it all looks really, really cool, but it's definitely way different from the original location.
Oh, 100%. And just from talking to you, David, your new gym is entirely different than the old gym.
Yeah. So the first gym was 7,000 square feet, and it was a warehouse gym, but it was an old tobacco drying gym. So it was built back in the late 1800s, and we had old oak wood floors. So the whole bottom was like just wood floors, which was a pain for like having powerlifting because, when you've got guys deadlifting 600-700 pounds and dropping it, even though you've got built up platforms, it's like the floors would crack and then you've got to replace beams and stuff. But the vibe was just so crazy because it was such an old building. Now, fast forward to 2 years ago, we moved into this new building, and it's newer construction, warehouse, 35-foot ceilings, and, it's just a completely different vibe. It's like when people say, hey, when are you going to open up a second hybrid? Well, you're not going to get the same vibe. You're not going to get the same feel because, again, it's going to be a completely different build, going to be a different building. And then equipment-wise, like it's taken 10 years to source a lot of this equipment and to try and replicate that now at what prices are going for, I mean, it's ridiculous. Like I can't go out and buy a H squat again when they're going for $12,000 to $19,000. The days are gone of me buying it for $2,000. So.
Right. Yeah, 100%. And I love the way that you just like in your space, Kristin, you just kind of went with the space you had and enhanced the space, like because it was already a cool space.
Well, I didn't have any money, so like I remember when we first came in, because I have concrete floors and they're not even, like they're very like it's about 100-year-old building that's been used for a variety of different things. So it's all old brick on the inside. And concrete floor. And I was like, well, I'll just rent the equipment and I'll grind it down myself and we'll epoxy coat it. And the landlord was like, great. If you figure out how to do that, let me know. I'll pay you to do the other side. And it took about 15 minutes of YouTube videos for me to tell my husband, I don't think I can do this. So we pivoted the whole plan, and I'm just trying to like work within. I do have some rubber flooring and I have some turf, but we also still have a lot of exposed concrete because rubber flooring is expensive.
Is that why you built the platform? Because the floor wasn't level?
I do. Yeah, my brother is an engineer, and he came up and helped me build we had like laid out like our dream layout so that we could build this platform so that we would be able to have like this very powerlifting focused experience. And then when we have meets, we don't have to rearrange the whole gym. And we had like laid the flooring and everything by the time I realized that the space, and we put the logo on the wall and everything. By the time I realized that the platform had a giant like dip in the floor. So I was like, okay. So my brother is an engineer and came out and helped me like build a platform to try and level that out and like figure out, okay, well, we've committed to this. We got to make it work.
Yeah. I mean, it overcame something that was a deficit in the original building. But it looks super cool. It's kind of a showpiece of your current gym.
Right.
Yeah, like that platform sits right underneath her big logo right on the purple wall.
Yep.
So it's super cool.
Not brick, so we thought we could make that the colorful one.
Yeah. So like I don't want to keep you guys forever, and I think we've kind of like hammered this out a bit, and like I think.
Sorry, my dogs are.
No, I keep it laughing. That's awesome.
I have the headphones on because they've been howling for like 30 minutes.
Yep. I've got a husky lab mix, and she does that. So
I have 3 huskies. So
yeah,
they're crazy.
Yeah, I think we're basically kind of getting to the point that your equipment variety versus your atmosphere, they're both super important.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't really afford to pick one over the other. You have to focus on both of them if you want to be successful. And depending on your space, where you're starting from, what your goal is, what the other gyms in your area are doing, should dictate where you're starting. And your goal should honestly be to have the best of both, but that should be dictated by what's going on in your area, and try to differentiate yourself and what's going on in your area and what space you're starting with and where you want to go should basically give you a roadmap of this is where I am, this is where I want to go, and this is how I'm going to get there in the best possible manner and have the most success by focusing first on atmosphere, first on equipment variety, or really hammering equipment variety and then going back to atmosphere. I think what we're getting at is it really depends on your space, your area, and what your goals are, right? Did I sum that up pretty well?
Yeah,
Definitely.
great.
All right, so I appreciate you guys coming on. Thank you very much. And if you've seen this episode, this is the first episode you've seen. We're back now. There's going to be a bunch more episodes. So we'll probably have these guys on again for some other episodes. And we're excited. So hope you enjoyed this one, and we'll see you soon.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more great content.